I
This
hope you can hear
conference will
me.
now be recorded.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes.
This conference.
Hello and welcome, everyone. I trust everyone can hear me.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. We're being recorded, as you all can hear, so that's good. So welcome to the opening webinar for the online discussion forum on the conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity. As you all know very well, this is being coordinated by the CBD Secretariat under the leadership of the Substa Chair and with the guidance of the Substa Bureau. And this is an important discussion, an important kickoff to our discussion that will be very critical to advance the discussions on marine issues, in particular on the conservation and sustainable use issues that were addressed in Substa Recommendation 24.9, but for which we unfortunately had insufficient time during Substa to resolve. So this will be an important discussion to advance the discussions on this issue in the lead up to COP15. and will, as we hope, create the conditions for a effective and efficient deliberations and negotiations at CBD COP. But this meeting, in and of itself, is not intended to be a negotiation session, but rather a session to advance the discussions and the technical discussions on the issues addressed in the annex of Substa Recommendation 24.9. So just to note that we have here coordinated with us during this webinar, Mr. Hesikio Benitez, who is the Substa chair, which I'm sure many, if not all of you know, and have seen his face many times on our computer screens over the COVID years. So great to have you with us, Hesikio. And as our co-facilitators for this webinar and for the forum, we are very pleased to have Mary-May Muzungel, who from the Seychelles, who very effectively co-chaired the contact group sessions on marine issues way back at the virtual Substa in May, almost a year ago from now was our the beginning of these discussions, together with so Mary May has been leading these discussions on marine issues under the contact group and at the Geneva session of the Substa. As many of you will remember, Mr. Adam van Opsieland was also co-chairing those discussions, but unfortunately he was unable to continue in that capacity. So alongside Mary May, we've invited our colleague Janos Hennecke from Germany to co-facilitate these discussions. And Janos has been very engaged in CBD marine issues and in these discussions in particular. So we're very happy, very appreciative of their collaboration and happy to have their facilitation role here. So this session here is to kick off the forum discussions. Now, this type of online forum has been coordinated a number of times under the CBD. It's the first time for us in the marine team to do this, so we beg your indulgence. But it has been done effectively for a number of other issues under the CBD, including on digital sequence information, capacity building, sustainable use. So this is certainly nothing new for parties and for the Secretariat, but perhaps new for some of us. This webinar will be a good opportunity for everyone to understand the background, the context, where this work is coming from, the objectives. We're going to talk a little bit about the logistics, how things will function, and then we will have some space for discussion on the key issues that we're going to be addressing in the subsequent forum. So with that, I will now pass off to our esteemed Substa chair to give us some opening remarks. So please.
Thank you very much, Joe. And dear colleagues and distinguished delegates, I'm very happy to see that there are more than 40 people connect into this opening webinar. It is my great pleasure as chair of SUBSTA to welcome you to the opening webinar of the online discussion forum on conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity in preparation for the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. With the ocean being a major reservoir of the world's biodiversity, the issue of marine and coastal biodiversity is critical to the work under the Convention and under SUBSTA. The importance of this topic becomes even more pronounced in view of the development of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, as well as other major developments across the global ocean landscape, in particular under the UN Decade on Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, the UN Ocean Conference, the World Trade Organization, the International Seabed Authority, deliberations on a new plastics treaty, and deliberations on a new international instrument for marine biodiversity in areas beyond national jurisdiction. As you all know, this work was called for by SUBSTA at this 24 meeting when we faced the unfortunate situation of not having sufficient time to fully discuss this very important topic, as Joe just mentioned. In its recommendation 24.9, Substat noted that the work on this issue was not complete and its 34 meeting and request the Executive Secretary to advance discussions on this issue prior to the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties to facilitate focused deliberations on these issues at that meeting. So, in this online forum has a very important task before it of providing outputs that can help accelerate deliberations on these issues at COP15. However, I wish to emphasize that the forum and the webinars are not negotiations. We cannot work on crafting revised specific text. This is something that has to be done in adequate space with full participation, and this would be at the COP. Rather, we want to facilitate a discussion on the key elements that should be included in the COP15 decision on this issue and what consideration parties must address when discussing these elements. Importantly, we need to focus on what we actually want to achieve with the COP decision on this issue. Of course, the importance of marine and coastal biodiversity cannot be understated, but we have to ask ourselves how best to enable COP decision with real impacts rather than creating Christmas tree paragraphs that may have little implications in terms of a practical action. I invite you to discuss and to look for the real essence of the draft COP decision. What are the essential elements where we all can reach an agreement? Please remind not to reinvent the wheel with all existing language of the programs of work on coastal and marine biodiversity or island biodiversity of previous decisions. Let's see practical elements for future work on urgent actions for conservation and sustainable use of coastal and marine biodiversity in accordance to actual circumstances. Certainly, we're not departing from zero, and there is a quite good elements on the draft decision. I understand that the modality of using an online discussion forum may be new for many of you, including me. Although it is unfortunate we cannot gather for an in-person meeting for these discussions, I urge you to make the best of this forum platform as a new, innovative way to share our views. I do thank very much to my colleagues, Mary May from Seychelles and Subsidiary Bureau member, as well to Janos Hennecke from Germany for accepting to facilitate this online discussion forum. I also thank the CBD Secretariat for the work behind to prepare this online discussion forum within this short time. We're doing our best to respond to Substat decisions, as well as the guidance from my colleagues from the Substat Bureau. Distinguished participants, I am sure that you, with your expertise, by the next week, we will have good outcomes, considerations, and elements to share to the fourth meeting of the Open-Ended Working Group in Nairobi in view of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and for the final decision to be adopted by the COP on this matter. I wish you a successful week with good deliberations, and thank you very much for your time. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Hesikio, for those remarks and for reminding us of what we're trying to do, where this is coming from, and what we're trying to achieve here. Before passing over to the co-facilitators, I just want to inform everyone here that as we can see, this is we're all equally capable, at least technically, in this meeting platform. We can all unmute ourselves, turn our cameras on and off. So in that regard, I urge you to exercise caution with using your camera and your microphone, and make sure you're muted at all times unless you wish to speak. And even if you do wish to speak, we ask that you use the raise hand button. On everyone's screen, at least on my screen, the raised hand button is at the bottom left. And if you want to take the floor at any time, please use that to indicate so. But when not speaking, we ask that you turn your cameras off and your microphones off. So thank you for that. So now I'm very pleased to pass the floor and the moderating role and responsibilities over to Janos and Mary May. Perhaps you may wish to introduce yourselves again for those who don't know you. And please, the floor is yours, and I'm ready to display the slides after you introduce yourself.
Thank you, Joe. Mary May, do you want to start to introduce yourself, or do you want me to start?
Thank you, Janos. Yeah, I'll start and then you'll take over since you'll be running through the presentation. So good afternoon and good time of the day to all of the participants. And we're pleased to see that, you know, there's so many of you online and some very familiar names that are coming up there. So my name is Mary May Muzungaile, and I'm with the Seychelles delegation and also Subsidiary Bureau member, and have been CBD focal point now for a good number of years. And I have been involved quite actively in the marine discussions within CBD and other platforms over the past few years. And I do hope that I will be able to help out with moderating the sessions both today and also during the online forums that will follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary May. And I think that's my turn now. Hello, everyone. A warm welcome from my side, from Germany to all the different parts of the world. I'm really glad and happy that I was asked to facilitate or co-facilitate this session. And we all know it's a very important piece of work. And I'm also happy to see, or at least saw, some of you people out there participating, and also the smallest member of the marine conservationists in Belgium. If you noticed her on the screen, that's lovely. Today is actually World Ocean Day, and I think it could not be a better start for this discussion. Ezekiel has already mentioned it. Oceans are extremely important, and we experts and actually everyone should take care at them and try to do its best to protect them. Now we have a new format here for this session, at least for the CBD marine issue. It's also new for me, and I unfortunately, Mary May has fallen sick a little bit, so I will take over large parts of this session today, simply because she doesn't feel well. So if you have the impression it's kind of improvised here, you are correct. I will be improvising because I just heard about this 10 minutes ago. So please bear with me, and I hope we can all together make this a successful session. Ezekiel pointed nicely out what is expected of us, and Mary May and myself will do the utmost to make this eventuate. My name, Janos Schenke, just for the ones who don't know me, I work for the Federal Agency for Nature Conservation in Germany, and I've been following CBD marine issues since 2015 when I started in the agency. And I really look forward to this discussion forum. And I think with that, we will start the presentation. And Joe is on the wheel. Now you can get into presentation mode.
It's not in presentation mode? Oh, okay. Let me try again. Presentation mode on my screen, but let's see. What about now?
Still not yet, no.
Okay, let me see. We may need to simply use that version. The presentation mode doesn't seem to translate to this platform, so I'll just make it a bit larger and downsize other things, and we can go from there.
Okay. Right, thank you. I hope everybody can see. I mean, the first slide was just the title of the event. And in these photos you see from Geneva, many of you, or some of you, might remember. Everyone who was there certainly remembers and might find himself or herself in the photos there. As you remember, in Geneva, Hesekiel has pointed out, there was only little time to discuss marine issues. And basically, two draft recommendations were addressed. One was an EPSAR, this was CRP4, and the second one was on conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity, CRP2. With respect to EPSAs, we had at least a little time. We had at least one contact group session. And as you remember, the discussions were, well, as usual, I would like to say, a little bit tricky and very complicated with respect to making progress. We covered only annexes 1 to 6, and the rest of the annexes and the draft recommendations could not be addressed, unfortunately. However, as you know, there will be another intersessional work session on EPSAs, but today we will look not into that. And with respect to the progress in Geneva, we agreed that we could not, there was no time for full consideration, and submissions were made for compilation. The chair welcomed them, and we have them. They were uploaded. Everybody, I think, has them. And with respect to CRP2, we had even less time. So we had the same procedure after our discussions in the plenary, whether or not to continue our discussions in Geneva. Also, the parties and observers were asked to provide textual submissions for the CRP2, and they were compiled by the Secretariat into an information document. And this was posted then paragraph by paragraph soon afterwards. Next slide, please. I'm sure you all have these documents, because they, of course, this is what is the foundation for our discussions and deliberations here. Now, also in Geneva, we made some changes or discussed a version and for the recommendation 24.9. What this meant or means that we cannot, or that we could not, discuss this CRP fully and comprehensively in Geneva. And this is recommendation 24.9, as I said. And basically, these are the 6 paragraphs which are crucial for what we do now. We agreed on intersessional work, and also how to proceed with respect to moving towards COP15. I will not go into details here, so we can go to the next slide. All right, okay, now we come to the intersessional work. Of course, there are many ways to work intersessionally, and I'm sure everyone would have liked to have a physical meeting somewhere in the world, but unfortunately it did not come through. We didn't find enough money. So we're here now in the online discussion forum. As I said, it's a new way to discuss this, so we all have to make our experiences. But on the other hand, it's a great opportunity to move things forward and to be prepared for COP15 too. And so we have this online discussion forum. We will get into this later with respect to technicalities, but I'm really happy that all of you experts were nominated or submitted their nominations to take part in this important exercise. Now to the documents. What will we discuss, or what will we look at, or what's the foundation of our discussions? So I've mentioned it. The first one is Subsidiary Recommendation 24.9. They are the main recommendations in this document, and of course we've started discussing it, but there are quite a few unresolved issues, and the substantive issues are addressed in the annex, which are the submissions also. I think we come to that. So I'll leave it here and go to the next slide. The substantive issues are addressed in the annex. Yes, and here we come to the compilation of the proposal. I've mentioned it already. All of you and all the country parties and observers provided submissions, and they were nicely listed by the Secretariat, outlined by different parties and observers, very nicely and very good overview. And then we have another document, which is a synthesis of proposals. So basically, the original text and the text from the unresolved SAFTA discussions were combined with the proposals, with the textual proposals from parties and observers, and were merged in one document. And this is one very important piece of work, because it basically merges all the different work strands and idea what we have, and of course where parties and observers would like us to go to. And this will be the foundation for the discussions. Thank you. Right. Now, what are we supposed to do? Ezekiel made already it clear what he expects us to do, and I hope we can live up to that. Now, the focus of the discussions will be the exchange of views on the recommended elements to address in CBD COP 15.2 decisions on this issue. So basically, we build on the annex of Subsidiary Recommendation 24.9, of course, take into account the compilation of the different views and comments which were submitted, and discuss or exchange views. Let me remind you again, this is not text negotiations. So we will not go into, oh, I want that word or this definition, something like that. We're experts here, and it will be much more a technical discussion, somewhere in between being too general, saying, oh, marine issue is important, and text proposal. So it will be a fine line, and Mary May and I, and with the support of the Secretariat, will try to find a balanced way in between these two extremes. And I hope with this, I'm sure, with your support, we will manage to get there. The expected output is twofold. One is, of course, a report from this forum, which will summarize the key elements of the discussion. And this will be done by Mary May, myself, and the Secretariat. And this will be made available to COP15 to inform the deliberations on the COP decisions. And okay, now I pass to the Secretariat. Right, thank you so much for now. And Joe, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to just take over a little bit and to give us some explanation of some logistics. So we have two web pages for this meeting. So we have first the meeting web page, which is the sort of the kind of CBD web page that we're all used to, that we're all normally used to seeing on the CBD. You can access it through the CBD meetings calendar or through any different channels, but this is one that we're used to, and one where all of the documents will be hosted. So here we'll have the concept note, the recommendation, the compilation of proposals, the synthesis of proposals, all the notifications, and you see here under number 2, a link to the online discussion forum. So the meeting webpage with all of the documents is separate than the forum page. So what you see here is the meeting webpage. Here is the forum. So, and this is where all of the focus of the discussions will be held. This is where participants will make their posts. This is basically where the forum will proceed. So what I'm going to do now is just, hopefully this works, and bear with me for a second, but I'm going to just share my screen to show you a little bit of how this works. And hopefully it's clear. Let me see. Okay, so I believe you should be seeing my screen. Yes. So I'm just going to navigate a little bit here. So you see the online discussion forum. There's some explanation background here. It provides the schedule of the forum. You can actually link back to the meeting webpage by clicking on this link on the right here. All of the documents are available there. We have some explanation of the participants and how they were selected, some ground rules. These are very important, and I'll go over these shortly. But basically, and I can't actually make any posts because, as you see, the forum technically is not open yet. The forum opens at midnight tonight. So basically, all of the discussions are organized according to threads, and we'll have a little bit more explanation on these threads later in the session. But this is where you make the posts. So you click on a thread, it brings you to that thread, and a thread is basically a stream or a conversation within the forum. So the threads are organized according to, we've basically grouped the paragraphs from the Subsidiary Recommendation 24.9 into categories, which these threads are, and this is where you will make your posts. You can make your own standalone posts, or you can respond to somebody else's posts. That's highly encouraged to respond to others' posts. That's how we have a dialogue and a conversation, so we very much encourage that. If people are unable to, or they have any issues connecting with us, please don't hesitate to let us know. We will do everything that we can to resolve that. But if your connection issues are unable to be resolved, we can find other ways to have your input to this meeting, including through submitting through a form. But we want to avoid that. We want to have everything in the forum. So let me just go back to the slides. Okay. So basically, just some of the ground rules for us to keep in mind. When posting for the first time, it's good to briefly introduce yourself. You will have your name on with your post, but when posting for the first time, you may wish to briefly introduce yourself. You should respond to the threads which are already there, and actually the threads are the only place in which the conversation or the dialogue can move along. You can now, I believe everybody will be automatically subscribed to the threads. Now, what that means is that if you are subscribed to a thread, you will receive an email whenever a new post is made under that thread. You can unsubscribe from those if you don't wish to receive those emails, but that's something that you can control, and I believe that everyone is automatically subscribed to the threads. So I'm quite sure, but we've been told that you can unsubscribe from those threads as well if you don't wish to receive messages. So it's good to keep your input and your posts brief, concise, and relevant to the topic or the question being discussed. Of course, we want some detail, we want some explanation, but we want to keep things focused and getting to the point. Ensure that your messages are relevant to the topic or the question being discussed. So obviously they need to be under the correct thread, but even in addition to that, we really want focused input that can help us move towards something useful, and not just some general posts or advertising what you or your projects or your initiatives are doing. So if you're responding to a post, you should make sure that the reference number of the previous post is provided. So every post, when you post, it has a reference number. If you're responding to a post, make sure that you're referring to that reference number when you're responding to a post. It's useful to need to think carefully about the header of your post, about the heading, and how, basically make sure that it's descriptive enough about the content, so that other people can see what you're talking about and see whether or not they need to really pay attention and look in great detail, and can find it later if they need to. And then finally, make sure that your text or files attachable. We're not able to attach posts to this forum. So don't worry about that. We won't be sharing any viruses. But finally, be respectful of others' viewpoints. Although this is an online forum, we're not sitting in a room together. Nonetheless, this is a professional setting and a professional meeting. So of course we need to treat each other with due consideration and respect, just as we would in an in-person meeting. So making posts, as you all have already received the welcome message, which outlines all the things I'm saying to you. But just to remind us that you have to be signed into your CBD account to make a post. Many of us already have a CBD account. It's very easy to create one. But if you don't have one, one has been created for you, and you should have received a confirmation email already on this. So please let us know if not. So what I would recommend is that if you already have a CBD account, your account has already been added to this forum. So I would recommend that you make sure that you can sign into your CBD account. It still works if you already have one, but if not, make sure that you've received a confirmation email and that you're able to sign into your account. The forum is publicly visible, so anyone can see what we're posting, but only participants can make posts. So it's something to keep in mind, that only those that have been selected, nominated and selected, can make the posts, but anyone can view the posts. And again, make sure that you post under the correct thread. So the threads are numbered, but the order of the threads will change depending on the most recent post. So if the most recent post is in thread 3 will come to the top. So when you're posting, make sure that you're posting under the correct post, and don't just assume they're in the actual order of which they were at the outset. Finally, just the schedule here. This is the webinar that we're currently in, the opening webinar. The online discussion forum will run for 4 days. 9 and 10 of June, and then 13 and 14 of June, and we will close it over the weekend. We will have it suspended, which means that no one can make posts over the weekend, and that of course is because we won't be able to moderate the posts over the weekend. So we will still nonetheless have 4 days of forum discussions, which is the same as the initial schedule, and then the closing webinar will be on 15 June. We have that scheduled for 8 to 10 a.m., the same time as this meeting is, but we may reconsider that in view of challenges for some of our colleagues in the other part of the world. So basically, as Janos said, for each thread, we want to discuss what elements should be included, what things should COP consider when deliberating these issues, and what's the reason for addressing these topics. But what we don't want to discuss are specific textual proposals, crafting text, going back and forth on text. These are not negotiations, and it's not appropriate for us to negotiate text here. And we don't want to be advertising projects, publications, initiatives, etc. I'm sure there's lots of interesting work that's going on, but this is not the place to basically get the word out about your respective projects. We have lots of other opportunities, including the UN Ocean Conference and many other things coming up to do that. So let's use those other channels for those issues. So with this, I'll pass back to our distinguished co-facilitators to review the individual forum threads. Janos, back to you.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Thank you, everybody. And please do not hesitate to ask questions if you encounter any problems. We want to make sure that everyone can participate equally in these forums. This is a big advantage, actually, since they're open 24 hours. Everyone at its own time can submit a post, and make contributions. Now, The next part of this webinar would be, or is, to review the threats, the different threats, and have start a little discussion on them and see where this takes us. Once again, this is also new for us, and we will see how where we get out. Maybe one thing you should keep in mind: what we do here, what we achieve here, and the report we produce will be a document which goes to COP and can be used by everybody. And ideally, this should provide some ideas how to bring this issue to a successful decision at COP15 So when we discuss things, when you make your post, please have this in mind, that it's about building bridges, about changing perspectives, thinking of the views of people which might have completely different positions. But we here as experts want to come together and try to find solutions how we can bridge these gaps in between different positions. So it's not about insisting on what you think is right or wrong, but maybe, or rather, coming up with solutions for bringing the different positions together. So much on that. That's a general remark. So let's go to the first thread. As Joe pointed out, we have had a look at the recommendation and made some kind of grouping how the different paragraphs and preambular paragraphs can be grouped and put into different threads. And now this is thread number 1, which was called collaboration or cooperation, collaboration and linkages with competent organizations and relevant initiatives. These are the preambular paragraphs 1 to 4. Now you can see some things are in brackets. There will be other brackets in other things which we have discussed. Some things are without brackets. This does not mean that the bracketed stuff is wrong and the non-bracketed stuff is right. As I said, we want to try to exchange views now. What we think are the key elements which should go into the COP decision to make it well easily concluded on or agreed upon at COP15. So with that, I would like to invite everybody to make comments, to share his or her view on this first thread. We'll go to the other threads, through the other threads afterwards. Let's start with that one. Just general ideas, general thoughts, general views, or questions if you have any. I open the floor, please. Go ahead.
So it seems we have a hand from Sophie. Can you see the hand?
I do see the hand, yes.
Okay,
Great.
good.
Please, Sophie, thank you. Please go ahead.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you for giving me the floor, and thank you very much for allowing me to intervene, and for sharing this, sharing your screen. It's quite small, so I will be leaning forward in order to be able to read right. Maybe just some general observations at first, or a comment and a question. The first one is I mean, Joe explained that indeed in this marine group we are unfamiliar with working with these forums. So I'm just wondering what maybe the Secretariat through you, Janos, can answer this. Why it was decided, or what the reason is to have such a limited participation. I know that from an EU perspective, the group that I'm part of, it was a big concern for us, that we felt like on the one hand, we at Substa, I see that audio isn't very good. Is it very bad? I will see if I can change something to my settings.
Yes, you are kind of hard to understand. If you may want to switch on the camera, then maybe this
Is
helps.
it better now?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay. Um, yes. So I don't know what you heard. I thanked you. That's one thing. I'm leaning forward because the letters on the screen are quite small in your presentation. And then I shared a concern of the group that I'm part of, the EU, that we were wondering, as we are unfamiliar with this type of setting, being marine, the marine group, we've never dealt with this, what the rationale is behind limiting the participation. I know that for in-person workshops, we have to limit them because of capacity and because of costs associated. But we were wondering what the reasoning behind limiting it for this forum, especially the online written forum, where uh, capacity may not seem, or at least doesn't seem to be an issue. Um, and the second question I had, and then I will come to the slide, apologies for this, is that we do know that the open-ended working group will start working, resume its work very soon. And we can't help but notice that in this particular recommendation and future decision, there are quite a number of overlaps with topics that are also included in the work of the open-ended working group. And I'm wondering what the interrelation is and what the influence of one and the other is, because I know from a Belgian perspective, at least, a lot of what I will be saying here is actually a lot of what I'm also saying to my colleagues working on the open-ended working group in regards of the different targets that they're discussing. So I don't know if as a group we need to discuss how one is linked to the other. And of course, I know formally, I mean, one is the open-ended working group with its targets, etc., and the other one is a decision, but in the content there is a lot of overlap. So I'm wondering how we will tackle that issue. And then coming to this particular thread, is that from a Belgian point of view, cooperation and collaboration and linkages with competent organizations and the CBD is extremely important. And we will support the paragraphs. I need to read them on a bigger screen, I'm afraid. But we do think that this is an issue with where CBD has an important role to play and should take on this important role. In particular, also with regards to future BB&J organizations or whatever will be set up for BB&J. So this is an important issue for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Let's try to answer the first two questions first. And I think, Joe, you would be the right person to do that.
Sure, yes, thank you. So first, regarding the participation, indeed, we did select from among nominated participants, and that selection was done by the Bureau, and in consultation, of course, with the Subsidiary Bureau. The rationale there is that although this platform provides a basis for, let's say, at least in terms of financial implications and logistical implications, can accommodate a large number of participants. We have to keep in mind that the output of this is summarizing the discussions that are being held, and in that regard, if we have certain regions, certain places, certain areas, or in particular, or for example, organizations, non-parties, joining in large numbers, that would significantly skew the discussions in terms of regional balance or seeking balance between parties and organizations or non-parties or observers. So given that this, as I said, this is supposed to be an expert input to this work, we want to make sure that it's not that the output is not skewed by certain geographical parts of the world. As many of you know, this is common practice for expert workshops. And we do that to seek regional balance. I mean, this is the same reason we have regional representation in our bureaus across Substa and COP bureaus and SBI bureaus. So the main reason is to seek a regional balance among parties and a balance among parties and observers. So we certainly regret that this means that we weren't able to accept all of the nominations, but we hope that you can understand at least this rationale. Regarding the interlinkages with the post-2020 deliberation, so as Sophie rightly pointed out, we don't have this is a Substa, this is a stream of work coming from Substa and going to the COP. It doesn't have any formal basis or formal mandate to input to the post-2020 discussions. It is, however, of course, very relevant in terms of topics and issues being addressed. And this is one of the reasons that we're convening this forum in particular before the Nairobi meeting. And actually one of the reasons that we're doing it this week instead of next week, because we need some time to prepare the outputs, prepare the report of this forum to have it be made available for the Nairobi discussions as reference for those deliberations. We are still deciding and deliberating on whether we can have an information session specifically on the outputs of this forum at Nairobi. So as some of you are familiar with, during the post-2020 negotiations, they have information sessions, and we may have one on the outputs of this forum, but if we don't have one in person in Nairobi, we will certainly have another public webinar before the Nairobi meeting to brief on the outputs of this meeting. But basically, we parties may wish to keep in mind, and participants in this forum may wish to consider that's how the kind of substantive issues that were being discussed here may inform the deliberations. We want to avoid negotiating the same thing in two different places. And of course, we're not negotiating here anyway. But in terms of talking about things like specific targets or kind of language that what should be in targets or kinds of issues that need to be addressed in the framework, those issues should be focused in the post-2020 discussions. If there's implications for the framework as a whole with respect to marine issues or requests to the Secretariat to do further work with respect to the post-2020 framework in marine issues, that's something that can be relevant for Substa, but we have to keep in mind the distinction between the mandates that this meeting has with respect to its mandate from Substa, and that any deliberations on the post-2020 framework on the goals, targets, indicators have to go into the post-2020 discussion. So the outputs of this will be made available to inform those discussions, the post-2020 discussions, and I'm sure the substantive aspects and the content of what we're discussing here will help parties and help participants evolve their thinking a bit as we come to the Nairobi. But we have to keep in mind that we don't necessarily have the formal mandate as a form of input to the Nairobi discussions. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Joe. I hope, Sophie, this answers your questions. And you may have seen that Ezekiel also posted something in the chat with respect to the selection of participants. With that, I would like to return to, thank you, Sophie, thumbs up. It's great. It's really unfortunate that I don't see you. Well, I see a thumbs up from Sophie now. That's fantastic. Better than nothing. And yes, I'm looking at the screen and don't see many people, but this is how it is. And I would like to go back to the thread number 1 now and just reiterate the intervention Belgium just made, that this thread or this topic is very important to Belgium, as CBD has a very important role in all these things to allow or facilitate cooperation, collaboration, and things like that with competent organizations. And BBNJ was specifically mentioned, many of you are certainly involved, knowledgeable about that. Any other comments on that thread? What are your views on this in general? Please raise your hands.
Sorry, I'm unable to find my hand up, but I wonder if I can step in.
I don't see who's this Vivienne Solis. Yes, then please you start. Your hands up is on the left bottom corner of your screen.
Yeah, I've been looking at it, but probably I have to reconnect to find it. So can I speak?
Yes, please then go ahead, and then I see Penina Blanket from Finland. Please.
Thank you very much.
Vivienne.
I'm speaking on behalf of some of the indigenous people and local communities groups, and I'm very thankful to be here and share our perspectives and ideas. I have two concrete issues to mention. One is the importance of being able to reach in Nairobi some of the key issues that we will be discussing, since at the same time all these issues concerning the ocean are going to be happening, and we are struggling to bring in the voices of indigenous people and small-scale fishing communities to all these global meetings that are occurring at the moment. So it is very important for us, the role that the Secretariat will play, joining and putting these issues and recommendations into the right sectors and discussions, so we can really make sense out of this really dispersed way in which the ocean discussions are happening at the moment. And it is very hard for us really to follow upon all of them, but we are happy to input. And we have been seeing, and concerning the threat that it's under discussion, the lack of presence of smaller scale fisher voices at the time of these cooperation, collaboration, linkages between relevant initiatives. So even when there is some space for the civil society to be present, small scale fishers have been organized in certain organizations and ways that should be recalled upon. So we would discuss this when times is okay in the forum, but I think that this is something we should look at, because sometimes the representation at the global level is so general that it really makes sense to bring in some of the organizations of civil society also to speak. So this issue about small scale fisheries especially will be something we would like to discuss in the thread. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivienne. Yeah, I think this is a very important point you made. All voices must be heard, and certainly IPLCs and small-scale fishermen should also be able to raise their voices. I would like to give the word now to Penina, and I think after that we move to the next thread. Thank you, Penina.
Okay, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. It's afternoon here in Finland. Yes, I will be very brief and would also echo what Belgium said. So the collaboration and cooperation is very important for Finland, and also the BBN's process for us. And as also these 2 decades for also science for ecosystem restoration, I think it's very valuable issue that should be included. Thank you.
Thank you, Penina. Excellent. Yes, let's not forget about the ocean decade decade of ocean restoration, or restoration in general. And with that, thank you for all the interventions. We move to thread number 2. Joe, please, could you change the slide, please? Right, here we go. So thread number 2 is on, well, marine coast biodiversity in the post-2020 GBF and implication for programs of work. So this is what we covered a little bit on with respect to the question of Sophie previously. This is on, well, how does it all fit into the GBF work and what will come out of it? How will it affect? Sorry, how will it affect the program of work? This comes from preambular paragraph number 5 and paragraphs 1 and 2 of the recommendation or draft recommendation. I open the floor again for any comments. And I can hear Serge. Can you mute your microphone, Serge? Or do you want to say something?
No, sorry, it was a mistake. I just I have the same problem as Vivienne. I don't have any sign to raise my hand on my screen. I looked everywhere, it's not there.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry for that. I mean, yes, of course. If you don't find this hand button, don't worry. Just raise your voice, and we will listen to you. No problem. So please go ahead.
No, I didn't have any point. Sorry, I didn't have any point at this time.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you wanted to say something. Right. Okay, but nevertheless, if anyone wants to say something without a hand raise button, just you raise your voice. And once again, any general comments, please, or views on that thread? No, I don't see anything. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. There's no right and there's no wrong. All we want to hear is your expert opinion on these things. Penina, yes, thank you. Go ahead, please.
Okay, just to be that for the general, so we think that it's very important, the thematic workshop that we had, I can't remember, a few years ago, and I think it's very important to welcome it, and I think it was very good, and there come a lot of information and issues that should be included, and also that all this will be in the program of work. I think it's also very important to be